Today we will talk about an action movie called Olympus Has Fallen. Be ready for spoilers ahead. We are taken to Camp David, where the president and one of his protection unit member called Mike are having a sparring session. In spite of him being the president, Mike does not hold back. He punches him hard without any hesitation as the two had grown to become friends. After a while, the president is called to prepare himself as he was getting late for a fundraising ceremony. After changing, Mike knocks on their door where both the president and the first lady are also ready for departure. He also goes for Connor, the president's son, who is also supposed to attend the ceremony. Connor begs to be left behind as these ceremonies are often very boring, especially for a kid. But his request is denied. He requests to at least ride with Mike and he is allowed. The presidential entourage leaves Camp David and travels in the dark as heavy snowfall reduces the road's visibility. Inside the Beast, the First Lady, Margaret, gifts her husband his grandfather's watch as a Christmas present. President Benjamin is very appreciative and the two kiss, sharing a romantic moment. As they approach a bridge, something suddenly fell on the car's hood, causing the car behind to hit them, and they spiral on the slippery ground before stopping, leaving the car hanging from the bridge. Mike quickly gets out of his car and runs to help. The First Lady was bleeding heavily from the head and she was disoriented. Two Secret Service officers hold on at the back as Mike rips the car door open and try to pull the president out. They tried to open the other door but it was jammed. The car was sliding forward more and more. President Benjamin begs them to first pull out the First Lady, but when the car tilts forward even more, Mike is left without a choice. He cuts the president's safety belt and pulls him out as the car drops to the ground with Margaret still inside. No one could believe it. The poor boy runs out of the car as he had witnessed the whole thing happen. The Secret Service had to hold the president back to console and prevent him from doing anything that may endanger his life. 18 months later, Mike is still suffering from depression caused by the events of that night. He had been dropped from the Secret Service and the Presidential Protection Team and given a desk job. His marriage with his wife is also struggling as he had grown distant from her. He meets with Jacobs, the Secret Service director, and requests to rejoin the Secret Service, but the president did not want that. He never blamed Mike, but the sight of him would serve as a constant reminder of what happened. She advises Mike to get some therapy and heal, but he prefers to deal with it like a man. On the other hand, the president holds a meeting to discuss how to deal with an increasingly troubling North Korea. The Speaker of the House is a no-nonsense man. He wanted the USA to go all arms out and threaten military action against them if they fail to stand down from attacking South Korea's borders and stop their missile tests. The Secretary of Defense disagrees as she feels this can lead to a full-blown war, and the rest of the committee plus the president also support her to avoid a war. At the same time, the entourage of the Prime Minister of South Korea was making its way to the White House. They are supposed to hold a meeting as North Korea was threatening to destabilize the entire region, and was going against the USA policy to the region. They finally arrives at the White House where Mr. Lee, the South Korea Prime Minister, is welcomed together with his head of security Mr. Parker. They are directed inside where they meet with the USA President. A few minutes away, an unidentified aircraft is flying directly towards the White House. Two American fighter jets immediately fly in and sandwich it between them. They demand for identification, but instead, guns emerge from the sides and the fighter jets are shot down. Immediately, the Secret Service enters the Oval Office and the president is guided away. Against protocol, the South Korea Prime Minister also comes with them, and they are taken down to the White House bunker. The Secret Service arm themselves and take positions around the White House ready for combat. As everyone else is evacuated from the premises, the entire police force is redirected toward the White House and the White House goes into full lockdown. The aircraft flies as low as possible and starts firing towards innocent people in the park and on the streets. Mike, who is sitting in his office, hears the commotion, and when he looks outside the window, he sees the aircraft and knows there is trouble. The White House anti-aircraft defense mechanism shoots missiles at it, but they release flares and the missiles explode without hitting it. The aircraft flies around the White House, shooting the Secret Service men who had taken positions on the rooftop and outside. A USA fighter jet finally reaches. It shoots a missile, but this time the flares don't work. The aircraft is hit on the back and it free falls and crashes on the ground, blowing up. Inside the bunker, the president is informed that the aircraft has been taken down. He is very worried as his son Connor is nowhere to be seen. Outside the White House, Mike arrives and is amongst a group of stupid civilians taking photos, who don't seem to understand the amount of danger they are in. Suddenly, a bus blows up and the civilians panic and start running away. Two suicide bombers emerge from them and walk closer to the fence. Mike pulls out his gun and shoots one of them, but the other one blows up, creating a gap in the fence. The South Korean security team outside double-crosses the Americans and kills the agents. The attackers shoot smoke bombs inside the compound and put on face masks. More men emerge from the crowd and jump inside the White House's compound. Due to the smoke in the compound, Secret Service vision is impaired, hence they are easily overwhelmed. Mike quickly picks his gun and follows them from behind, taking out several men. An emergency response team gathers inside the Pentagon crisis room consisting of the highest-ranked personnel in the American government. Inside the bunker, the South Korean Prime Minister's security team turns on the Americans. They shoot the agents inside and take the president hostage. President Benjamin could not believe it. Dave, the new Secret Service agent who had replaced Mike, was a traitor. He had worked with the enemies and led them to the most important and secured room in the world. Two garbage trucks make their way and park just outside the White House. They blow up their legs and make sure they are totally immobile. As more Secret Service agents come out of the White House to defend it, the attackers in the compound suddenly lie flat on the ground. The garbage trucks opens up, revealing automatic machine guns. They shoot down all the agents defending the White House entrance and the officers who had turned up as backup. Mike could not believe it. He could only watch as the White House was slowly but surely falling. When the machine gun's fire dies down, the entrance is shot to pieces by an RPG. Mike quickly runs inside, but the two agents with him do not make it. He quickly runs upstairs as the attackers make their way inside. They proceed upstairs, where the rest of the agents are. They blow down the door and throw in smoke grenades. In that confusion, they shoot and kill the remaining agents and officially take control of the White House. By the time the military arrives, Olympus had already fallen. The snipers take positions on the rooftop and the soldiers surround the White House. As the soldiers wait for the command to get in, the Pentagon is contacted. The Prime Minister of South Korea appears on the screen, but before he could say anything, he is shot in the head. The President of America is put on a gunpoint and they are ordered to stand down or else their president will be next. When the Speaker of the House arrives in the Pentagon, he is immediately put under the protection of the Secret Service. He is named as the acting President of the United States, as both the President and his vice are unable to execute their duties. The man heading the terror attack, real name is Kang Yonsik, a North Korean defect who had managed to infiltrate the South Korean security team. He was fighting to give millions of Koreans a chance for a good life which he believed America was blocking, and for the prosperity of Korea by unifying North and South Korea. He had planned the White House attack so well that he knew the military backup would take 15 minutes to arrive, but he took control in only 13. His hacker quickly takes control of the computer and disconnects all forms of monitoring from outside the White House, including CCTV monitoring which could be used by the Pentagon. The whole time, the president's eyes are glued at Dave. He could not understand why he chose to be a sellout and betray his own country, but Dave is quick to remind him that the government sold the American people first to the highest bidder. They sold them to Wall Street and the global elite, and he was tired of it. Mike is still alive. He walks slowly along the corridors littered with dead bodies and finally comes to the CCTV monitor room. The terrorist inside hears some noise and goes to investigate. Mike jumps from nowhere and stabs him several times, killing him. He takes his gun and strangely, he finds a picture of Connor in his pocket. Mike then goes to the monitor and accesses the main frame. He switches off all the cameras inside, leaving the terrorist in the bunker blind. He then proceeds on to the Oval Office and contacts the Pentagon. He identifies himself in Jacobs. The Secret Service director recognizes him. The other officials are skeptical, but they have no choice but to trust him. He warns against attacking as all the windows and doors are lined with C4 explosives. Kang contacts the Pentagon again to make his demands. He wanted America to recall the 7th Fleet from the Sea of Japan and withdraw all the American troops from the demilitarized zone of Korea, failure to which they would execute all the officials one by one, including the president. The speaker is left with an impossible choice, to either obey the demands of a terrorist or sacrifice the president's life for a foreign land. Kang takes the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and slams his head on the chair. He puts a knife on his neck and threatens to behead him. He demands for his Cerberus code to access the nuclear weapons, but when the poor guy hesitates, he pushes the knife against his neck even harder. The president could not bear to see him be beheaded, so he gives him the go-ahead to reveal the code, and he did, to save his life. On the other hand, the Pentagon contacts Mike. They reveal that one Cerberus code had been entered and 2 remain. The people in possession of the code were all hostage to the terrorist. They knew the terrorist could have 2 of the codes, but the president would never say his, that is, unless his son was in their hands, and they threatened to harm him. So Mike is given new instructions to find the president's son and deliver him safely outside, as that was their only hope. As Mike is walking searching for Connor, he hears men approaching and quickly hides. When they enter into the room, they find it empty and Mike is nowhere to be seen. He had entered into the secret passage in between the walls. As he is walking around, he runs into Connor, who was hiding there. The scared boy hugs Mike as he was glad to see him. One of the terrorists walks forward and notices a gap where Mike had used to enter. He walks back and they form a line and open fire at the wall. Mike on the other hand shield Connor as they run as fast as possible as streams of bullets rain into the wall. They jump out of the wall unharmed and they escape down the corridors as the terrorists follow them from behind. They make their way to the basement where Mike opens a ventilation shaft and puts Connor inside. He instructs him to climb up to the surface quietly where he would be taken to safety. Unfortunately, one of the terrorists walks inside. He walks straight towards the opening and looks up the shaft where he sees Connor, but before he could do anything, Mike jumps from his hiding place and chokeholds him to death. He quickly relays the location where they would find Connor to the Pentagon. Two soldiers quietly walk in the dark compound and find Connor. They pull him out and walk away without being noticed. As two men are walking down a corridor, Mike jumps from the darkness and attacks them. He then takes them hostage and ties them up to politely ask some few questions. To properly intimidate the other, he sinks his knife down the neck of one and stabs the other on the thigh. After some few minutes of interrogation, Mike knew everything about Kong. He was a wanted criminal who had been linked to several attacks, but no Western power had ever been able to photograph or identify him. As he had a perfect hiding spot in the South Korean government, Mike also found out that only 28 terrorists were left inside the building. The officials wanted to go all out on them, but Mike warns them not to, but to wait for his instructions. Kong speaks in the loudspeaker as he knew Agent Mike is still inside the building. He tries to demoralize him by reminding him of how he let the First Lady die, but Mike promised to take him out. He taunts Kong if he is still looking for Connor as he is already out of the building. Angrily, Kong sends Dave to finish Mike once and for all. This time, Kong unzips the Secretary of Defense as she had the second Cerberus code. He asks for it politely, but she says no. He slaps the crap out of her and she falls to the ground. President Benjamin could only helplessly watch as he take her by the neck and start beating her up. He pushes her down the stairs and by this time, she could barely stand up. He was left with no choice as Kong would torture her to the end. The president could not watch her suffer anymore. He gives her an order to give up the code and she did. When the Pentagon sees that the second code had been entered, they began being desperate. On the other hand, Mike bumps into Dave. Mike had zero idea that he was a traitor and Dave just played along. He pretends to be scared and even lights a cigarette. As they are talking, Dave says the name Kong and Mike immediately knew something was wrong. Dave tries to attack him but he scoops him up and they fall down. Mike quickly overpowers the traitor and stabs him in the chest. He hands him an earpiece and promises to forgive him if he tells Kong he is dead, but after he did it, Mike also betrayed him the way he betrayed his country. The Pentagon deploys 6 helicopters in the dead of the night as they are desperate. Unfortunately, the terrorists already saw this coming and are ready. Mike begs them to wait for him to check the rooftop but they refuse. When Kong sees the helicopters coming, he orders his men to prepare the advanced weapon on the roof of the White House. The helicopter reach, but before they could land, the weapon opens fire. One by one, 5 of the 6 helicopters are shot down. Mike goes to the roof and blows up the weapon with an RPG, saving one of them. Unfortunately, one of the falling helicopter falls where Mike was standing and he falls through the roof to the ground. Kong is not happy at all. He shoots the vice president in front of them. He gives them 1 hour to recall the 7th Fleet and provide a fueled helicopter for him to escape with. When Mike regains consciousness, he immediately contacts the Pentagon, but this time they had no hope left. The speaker orders him to stand down as he was willing to obey the terrorists' commands and save the president's life. Mike begs them to trust him and he is given 30 minutes. Suddenly, he appears on the terrorist screen. Kong is surprised as he thought Mike had been killed by Dave. Mike promises to murder him in the most terrible way and leak photos of his dead body to the press. Kong takes the Secretary of Defense and drags her outside. He takes her to the White House main entrance and releases her. The poor woman walks barefoot on the ground filled with glass, unsure of what to do. When she gets where everyone could see her, Kong raises his gun ready to shoot her and use her as an example, but suddenly, Mike shoots at them from the stairs. She takes this chance to escape and she is received by the military. Mike kills all the terrorists but Kong escapes back to the bunker. The Pentagon finally yields to their demand. They recall the 7th Fleet and present a helicopter for Kong. When the terrorists come out, they are all dressed in the same black overall and their heads are covered. The military snipers try to distinguish them but they are unable to. They walk slowly and enter into the helicopter. The helicopter takes off but before it goes far, it blows up. No one could believe it, though not confirmed yet. The president is believed to have died, but to Mike, something did not add up and this did not make any sense. He is right. Both Kong and the president are not dead. Kong activates all the nuclear weapons. He did not want to launch them. He wanted them to detonate on American soil and kill millions of Americans. He wanted America to know suffering and famine and turn the nation into a nuclear wasteland. He blows a hole in the side of the bunker where they are supposed to escape through, but as they are walking out, Mike also arrives shooting the two in the front. The president starts to struggle with Kong, but he is shot in the stomach. Mike jumps at him and they begin to fight. Kong is very strong and he overpowers Mike and pin him to the wall. Mike breaks free and chokehold Kong on the ground. He picks a knife and finishes him off. When he looks behind, the nuclear time bomb is still going. He quickly runs there and the Pentagon instructs him on how to deactivate. When the time bomb finally stops, he had only 3 seconds to spare. Mike picks the president up and they both walk outside where the military is waiting for them. Everyone cheers for this new hero who had saved the United States of America and its people. The American flag is raised and flies high again.